Hey, in today's video, I want to share with you the best photography advice I've ever received. Now, this is kind of a two-part thing, and it stems back to me moving from portrait photography into food photography. And at the time, I didn't know a lot about food. I'd spent a decade doing portraits. I sort of got the basics of it under my wings. And then when it came to food, my images weren't that great. And I was fortunate enough to speak to a very talented food photographer called Howard Shooter, and he offered me some sage advice, and I'd like to pass it on to everyone else because it's helped me no end. Now, the advice he gave me was incredibly obvious, so let me explain it afterwards a little bit as well. So the main advice he gave was, make the food look good. The only thing that matters is that the food looks good. And this is the same for portrait work. In my portraits, no one cares whether you did a 50 light setup or you got a 150 megapixel image. They want to look good, and it's the same for the food. Now, what looks good is subjective, and some people would say that one thing looks great and another thing looks awful, but as long as it looks good to you, that's the main thing. Now, to go along with this, he also talked about keeping everything as simple as possible, and that is something I really try and stick to. Like, if you can do it with one light, do it with one light. A lot of my early portfolio work was just one giant softbox, and that was it, because soft light always looks good. Now, as my tastes changed over the years, obviously I moved away from the soft light and I started bringing in more like hard light, but still it was like one big light sort of up yonder, just like straight into the face of the food, and just a very stark look, and it's always keeping it simple. I'll often shoot an entire day without changing any of my lighting or any of my settings and just focus solely on the food. So it doesn't matter whether we've changed lenses a million times or bought like 50 lights out. All that matters is that the food looks perfect in the camera and that we capture it correctly exposed. Everything else is just a bonus. So I think this is true for a lot of photographers, especially those starting out. Try to focus less on the technical side of it and the lighting and the camera settings, and more on making the image itself look good. When I very first started out, I used to shoot weddings. I'd do about 30 a year, and I used to have a second shooter plus an assistant who would give a camera to. Now, with that assistant, we'd often give them a single fixed lens, like a 28 or a 35mm, and we'd put them in full auto mode, because I was more interested in them capturing a good moment than being able to nail manual focus, because that doesn't impress me at all. Just because you can get the exposure right doesn't mean anything. What I want is an interesting image being captured. So that's what they were there to do. And having them in full auto mode allowed them to do that without all the extra chaos in the head of, how far to bounce the flash off the ceiling, what aperture to be at, how much ambient light to let through. All these little bits like that just disappear, and all they have to do is perfectly compose the image and capture it. And that is what photography is. It's not all about the tech. And yes, all the lights and all the tech can help with that last few percent, but predominantly it's about what you put in front of the camera, how you choose to express it in front of people, and what you choose to take away from the image as well as keep in there. A lot of people talk about abstract photography, but I think it's more of a subtractive art form, because it's not abstract. You are recording what is there for most of us, but it can be subtractive because you're choosing what to take and what to throw away. You're choosing what to keep within the frame and what to take out of the frame. And that's a very important decision, and far more important than should I be using a parabolic umbrella here. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. If that's been useful to you, do let me know in the comments below. I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.